From an audience's point of view, reviews appear to be easy to do. You get a game, movie, TV show, book, song, anything you're remotely interested in, digest it for 2 minutes, an hour, or however long it takes until you end up writing out your takeaways, record it, edit it all together, and upload it for the world to see. After doing reviews and discussion videos on YouTube for over 2 years, I can say with certainty that there's more to think about when it comes to doing reviews. Well, how complicated can it be? To offer up an example, let's say that you're planning to review a video game. Let me ask you several questions before you finalize your decision. What game do you want to review? Why do you want to review it? Who is this directed to? Do you have an angle you're capable of sticking to? Can you offer a point of view that hasn't been said before? All of these questions and more only fulfilled the prerequisites for the first step. Obviously, not all these questions need answers, but it's questions every reviewer should have in the back of their minds. That's the mentality I had when thinking about reviewing, or rather re-reviewing, State of Decay 2. There are several reasons why I'm calling this a re-review. First, this is a redo of a video from 2 years ago from the Misfit Tangents channel. My friend Jesse and I wanted to experiment with adding skits to our reviews. The result was a video that's more focused on the skit rather than the review itself. While we did have fun shooting the whole thing, it was at the expense of the point of the video, informing the audience about the game in a clear and concise manner. Second, this game has had many updates and received downloadable content since its release date, so I thought this would be a perfect time to check back and see what's new, what has improved, and what still needs improving. Third, and most importantly, I want to prove to myself that I'm more than capable of writing and editing a review than before. In the first review, there was no gameplay footage accompanying the review, audio was simply out of balance, and there's little post-editing outside of the intro sequence. That won't do. This is a personal mission of mine that I want to accomplish by the end of this video. If you think I've improved compared to my first review of State of Decay 2, leave a like. I'll leave a link to the original review of State of Decay 2 in the description so you can compare between this video and the review from before and judge it for yourself. For now, let's see if State of Decay 2 is worth checking out for newcomers and fans of the series. For those who aren't familiar, the State of Decay games are developed by indie studio Undead Labs. The series is all about survival horror set in a zombie apocalypse. Wow, I haven't heard of this before! However, there is an element that separates State of Decay from other zombie games: the emphasis of community, resource management, and base building. While you start off with a pair of survivors, there's no central main character. In State of Decay, the player takes control of multiple characters they find in the game world and creates the story as they survive through the zombie apocalypse. At certain points in the game, you will be met with completing tasks for other survivors, which can reward you with supplies or recruiting them to your community. Recruiting survivors may unlock new buildings and special abilities for existing buildings. For example, there's an unused medical annex in my base that can be transformed into a trauma pharmacy or a plague annex. Each choice has benefits that's useful to my community of survivors, but there's not a single survivor in my group who has a skill that fulfills the requirement to upgrade this annex. The logical conclusion is to find a survivor that has this skill. After nearly completing a mission about a survivor having the player search for their husband, I noticed something when I was learning about both characters. Each one has a skill that I need in order to upgrade the annex from earlier. The problem is, I can only choose one survivor to take with me as soon as the task is finished. While not complicated, the gameplay loop of venturing outside of your base, looking at your surroundings, fighting against zombies, scavenging for supplies, managing your resources, recruiting more survivors, and building more areas in your base is fun. Combat is nothing to write home about, but it complements the game well enough. You'll have an assortment of weapons such as pistols, assault rifles, sniper rifles, and crossbows among others. But the most effective weapons are melee weapons and your trusty knife. All ranged weapons are useful, but they will produce noise that will attract more zombies in the vicinity. For a game like State of Decay, ranged weapons should be used as the last resort, though there are some exceptions to that rule, which I'll get to later in the video. For the most part, stealth is more valued compared to running and gunning. State of Decay 2 has a few things added, such as the addition of blood plague zombies. These special zombies have the ability to infect survivors and turn them into zombies themselves. There is a way to cure them from this disease before time runs out, and all of them involve killing blood plague zombies and finding blood plague samples. This new element to look out for while scavenging and completing tasks is kinda neat. The first time around. While I like how there's a brand new threat that players need to look out for on top of normal zombies, they're more of an annoyance by the time you learn how to treat the disease. To put it simply, being infected sounds less like, "Oh no, the blood plague!" and more like, "Ah, great, the blood plague." There's something I didn't mention regarding the game, and that's the story. Technically, there's no story in the State of Decay games. Before you start the game, you are presented with a character select screen. Each character has a small background and a set of skills that will aid you in your journey. Other than that, it doesn't matter who you choose, the game starts out the same. The characters start out in an abandoned refugee camp, the tutorial plays, you meet up with 2 survivors, and you leave the refugee camp to start up a home base. Afterwards, you are free to explore the world as you see fit. There's no large narrative that the player must follow. Instead, the player creates their own story as they progress through the zombie-infested landscape. Sound familiar? Although I'm an Xbox fan, I'm not going to pretend that Xbox's library of games are different from each other. On the surface, they look different, but the concept of creating your own story remains consistent with the games they publish, such as Fable, Crackdown, Minecraft, and the Forza games. State of Decay is no different, but I think the concept is made more apparent here. While you do get to choose between characters with backstories, you're really choosing between skills they're equipped with. And in a strange way, I'm okay with that. Mind you, this is a personal preference, but I'm alright with games having little to no story as long as the gameplay loop is engaging enough. It's kind of like playing Telltale's The Walking Dead for the gameplay. I mean, yeah, it's there, but that's not why you play the game. You're playing it for the story. Conversely, you're playing State of Decay 2 not for the story, but rather for the gameplay. Don't worry, we'll get to that later in the video. So what's different from this current version of the game compared to the launch version? As it stands, the gameplay is about the same as it was since the first time I reviewed this game 2 years ago. In some cases, it feels like the game took a step back. Keep in mind, I'm playing the PC version of the game because the original Xbox One version has an inconsistent frame rate and a ton of motion blur. I own an original Xbox One, so I can't comment on the other versions of the game like the Xbox One X. Thankfully, the graphics and resolution can be changed with the PC version, but all the power of a gaming rig can't fix the bugs and glitches that appear in State of Decay 2. What kind of bugs? Well, there are bugs that make zombies fuse to vehicles and buildings, bugs that make you live life as a Dutch, bugs that don't let you talk to people, and bugs that hardlock the game. In regards to visuals, they are serviceable. From afar, the graphics look good for an indie title, but upon closer inspection, they are not as pleasing to look at. Character models are decent enough, but much like before, good from afar, but questionable the closer you are. This is especially true as soon as you inspect the animations of characters. Certain animations, like executing zombies, will more often than not clip through walls. In terms of polish, there doesn't seem to be a lot of it there. In any zombie survival game, from The Walking Dead to Resident Evil, atmosphere is crucial to immerse players into their world. State of Decay's visuals, when it works, invokes a sense of solitude, like your group are the only survivors left in a world ravaged by zombies. Other elements such as lighting and the music enhance this experience. In regards to the latter, the music consists of ambient pieces, music that plays in the background. There's no equivalent to the Safe Room or Wesker's theme from the Resident Evil games, but the music that's made for the game is exceptional for the genre. Look, I get it. If the system ain't broke, why fix it? The Gears of War series also had this mentality in mind. The gameplay meta of using shotguns and tactics like snapping back and forth from wall to wall like a chimpanzee hasn't changed since 2006. but it did at least introduce new tactics and weapons in newer entries that spice up the meta. State of Decay 2 has a few additions, but the overall game feels less like a proper sequel and more like a State of Decay 1.5. While it's true there's no substantial improvements made to the base game, there are other modes of play that may intrigue newcomers and bring back players of old.
You be careful down there, you hear me? Don't embarrass me, and maybe I'll swing by to get you when you're finished.
Daybreak was the next major DLC released for State of Decay 2 in September 2018. This serves as the base game's Horde mode, where you secure an important area and fight off wave after wave of zombies. Like any other Horde mode, the waves continually climb in difficulty as you progress through the game. This is where I believe the combat gets to reach its full potential. In the base game, you're not given many opportunities to use ranged weapons outside of dangerous encounters because stealth is more favored. In Daybreak, you're given an arsenal of weapons to start with, and you'll be blasting away enemies with your shotgun, climbing over walls, and finishing off zombies with explosives. If the base game is a slow burn to rebuild society, then Daybreak is State of Decay 2's chaotic brother. While it was a lot of fun playing through this one-off Horde mode, there are two problems I have with it. First, the characters. Instead of using the characters from the base campaign, you play as a random nameless soldier protecting a person from a zombie invasion. Though, that's not to say they don't have a sense of humor.
Well, shit, that's a goddamn drone strike. Looks like we got a friend up there somewhere.
Anybody who drops bombs on zombies is a damn fine friend in my book.
Damn it, you let the nerd get killed.
Well, I never said it was a good sense of humor. Second is the replay value. Whether you complete or fail the mission, you are awarded with a weapon that you can use before you start the game. In the beginning, you are limited to the weapons you start off with. As you continue to play the game, you'll unlock more weapons. These weapons and other unlocks can be used in the base game. The problem isn't the rewards, but rather the gameplay loop of Daybreak. The loop for this mode is fortify, kill, heal, repeat. The draw for the State of Decay series is not just fighting against zombies, but also building a community and rebuilding a bit of humanity. When you take away what made the base game special, Daybreak feels like an unnecessary mode that copies what other zombie survival games did in the past. Make no mistake, this is a fun diversion from the main game, but I do feel that something special was missing from this DLC. If the base mode for State of Decay 2 is a demonstration of open world survival horror, and the Daybreak DLC is a demonstration of his combat prowess, then its other DLC mode, Heartland, is a demonstration of his narrative strength.
So, this is Trumbull Valley, huh? I thought it'd be bigger.
Your mom loved visiting this place. It killed her to leave it all behind.
Aunt Fee, I'm pretty sure it was the vodka that killed Mom. I know I was only 6 at the time, but I was there.
Released in June 2019, Heartland is more story-focused compared to what was offered in the base game. Instead of choosing between an assortment of characters, you choose between two different pairs of characters. One pair consists of a woman and her emotionally distant aunt searching for her estranged father, while the other consists of an ex-con and a young deputy in search of an ally. Other than that distinction, the gameplay remains the same as the base game. The story itself isn't memorable, whichever one you choose. They start the same way, you meet the same survivor, and you set up base on the same location. Whichever story you want to follow, the game takes place in Trumbull Valley, the area of the first State of Decay game. Now that I mention it, a lot of the assets for this DLC are ripped straight from the last game. Let me show you what I'm talking about. When I was scavenging for supplies, I noticed that the area seems familiar. At first I didn't give it a second thought and moved on. After reviewing the gameplay footage, I had to go back to the first game and see if this building was the same one. Sure enough, this was the exact building. Now, let me say this before offering any harsh conclusions. Reusing assets is fine. Lots of games use this method in order to save on time and money. In fact, it's more common than most people think. Some examples are subtle, while others are borderline madness. I understand that this is an indie studio with around 60 people by the time State of Decay 2 released, and this was 1 month before Microsoft decided to purchase the studio for their Xbox Studios portfolio. With that in mind, I can't help but shake the feeling that this DLC was created because it was faster and cheaper to import the map from the first game rather than creating a new location from scratch. One would think that this would mean that the team has more time to iron out any bugs and glitches before the release of the Heartland DLC, but the opposite is true. Strangely enough, I encountered more game-breaking bugs in this mode than the base game. Imagine my shock when I discovered a game-breaking glitch like not being able to talk to other survivors in order to progress through a mission. I've dealt with a variety of bugs and glitches in video games in my life, but rarely do I ever encounter a bug that breaks the game. Twice in a row, no less. How was this overlooked during development was anyone's guess. For the most part, the Heartland DLC was a decent experiment for creating a storyline in an open-world zombie apocalypse, but it's clear that it needed more time to cook in the oven.
I'll be taking a trip, I think. Start over somewhere new. Good luck, all of you.
I did the right thing, but that doesn't make me feel better.
You got obsessed with this game. You tackled me for this game, and it's not even... What did you give it again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Like a 7.5.
7.5. You're a nitpicky. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like,
Wow.
they were like...
And you were obsessed with this game too, man.
2 years ago, I ended my State of Decay 2 review with a 6 to 7 out of 10, saying that compared to the first game, there hasn't been many substantial improvements made outside of the graphics and enemy variety. Now, the sentiments more or less remain the same, but I can see why people wouldn't mind it. While I don't think it's a bad game, believe me, I played worse games before, I don't believe it's a great game either. Most of the mechanics and gameplay loop remain the same, with some additions to the meta. The content added post-launch, while fun on their own, has some drawbacks attached to them. For fans of the zombie survival genre, there's fun to be had here, especially for newcomers of the series. For fans of the State of Decay games, however, it's more the same as the last. Whether you would take this statement as a good or bad thing is all up to you. On a personal note, even with all the issues I stated throughout the review, I still managed to have fun playing the game. I like the combat, the community, and base building aspects of the series, but I can't deny that the experience leaves more to be desired. I believe there's potential to expand upon this formula. With a bigger budget and a larger team working on the third entry, I can only hope that Undead Labs can take notes on what worked before to create a zombie survival game State of Decay can potentially become.